in Europe during this period in favor of gunmetals and other mixed alloys, 86. But by about 1000 brass artifacts are found in Scandinavian graves in Scotland, 87. Brass was being used in the manufacture of coins in Northumbria, 88. And there is archaeological and historical evidence for the production of calamine brass in Germany, 77, and the Low Countries, 89, areas rich in calamine ore. These places would remain important centers of brass making throughout the Middle Ages period, 90, especially. Dinant. Brass objects are still collectively known as delanderie in French. The baptismal font at St. Bartholomew's Church, Liege in modern Belgium, before 1117, is an outstanding masterpiece of Romanesque brass casting, though also often described as bronze. The metal of the early 12th century Gloucester candlestick is unusual even by medieval standards in being a mixture of copper, zinc, tin, lead, nickel, iron, antimony and arsenic with an unusually large amount of silver, ranging from 22.5% in the base to 5.76% in the pan below the candle. The proportions of this mixture may suggest that the candlestick was made from a hoard of old coins, probably late Roman. 91. Latten is a term for medieval alloys of uncertain and often variable composition, often covering decorative borders and similar objects cut from sheet metal, whether of brass or bronze. Especially in Tibetan art, analysis of some objects shows very different compositions from different ends of a large piece. Aquamaniles were typically made in brass in both the European and Islamic worlds. The cementation process continued to be used, but literary sources from both Europe and the Islamic world seem to describe variants of a higher temperature liquid process which took place in open-topped crucibles. 92. Islamic cementation seems to have used zinc oxide known as tutaya or tutti rather than zinc ores for brass making, resulting in a metal with lower iron impurities. 93. A number of Islamic writers and the 13th century. Brass aquamanile from Lower Saxony, Germany, c. 1250. Italian Marco Polo described how this was obtained by sublimation from zinc ores and condensed onto clay or iron bars. Archaeological examples of which have been identified at Kush in Iran. 94. It could then be used for brass making or medicinal purposes. In 10th century Yemen al-Hamdani described how spreading alaglimia, probably zinc oxide, onto the surface of molten copper produced tutaya vapor which then reacted with the metal. 95. The 13th century Iranian writer al-Kashani describes a more complex process whereby tutaya was mixed with raisins and gently roasted before being added to the surface of molten metal. A temporary lid was added at this point, presumably to minimize the escape of zinc vapor. 96. In Europe a similar liquid process in open-topped crucibles took place which was probably less efficient than the Roman process, and the use of the term tutti by Albertus Magnus in the 13th century suggests influence from Islamic technology. 97. The 12th century German monk Theophilus described how preheated crucibles were 1/6 filled with powdered calamine and charcoal and topped up with copper and charcoal before being melted, stirred, then filled again. The final product was cast, then again melted with calamine. It has been suggested that this second melting may have taken place at a lower temperature to allow more zinc to be absorbed. 98. Albertus Magnus noted that the power of both calamine and tutti could evaporate and described how the addition of powder glass could create a film to bind it to the metal. 99. German brass-making crucibles are known from Dortmund dating to the 10th century AD and from Soest and Schwert in Westphalia dating to around the 13th century. Confirm Theophilus' account, as they are open-topped, although ceramic discs from Soest may have served as loose lids which may have been used to reduce zinc evaporation, and have slag on the interior resulting from a liquid process. 100. Africa. 12th century bronze head from Rife, actually of heavily leaded zinc brass. Some of the most famous objects in African art are the lost wax castings of West Africa, mostly from what is now Nigeria, produced first by the Kingdom of Ife and then the Benin Empire. Though normally described as bronzes, the Benin bronzes, now mostly in the British Museum and other Western collections, and the large portrait heads such as the bronze head from Ife of heavily leaded zinc brass and the bronze head of Queen Idia, both also British Museum, are better described as brass, though of variable compositions. 101. Work in brass or bronze continued to be important in Benin art and other West African traditions such as Akan gold weights, where themetal was regarded as a more valuable material than in Europe. Renaissance and post-medieval Europe. The Renaissance saw important changes to both the theory and practice of brass making in Europe. By the 15th century there is evidence for the renewed use of lidded cementation crucibles at Zwickau in Germany. 102. These large crucibles were capable of producing c.20 kg of brass. 103. There are traces of slag and pieces of metal on the interior. Their irregular composition suggests that this was a lower temperature, not entirely liquid, process. 104. The crucible lids had small holes which were blocked with clay plugs near the end of the process, presumably to maximize zinc absorption in the final stages. 105. Triangular crucibles were then used to meld the brass for casting. 106. 16th century technical writers such as Biringuccio, Urca and Agricola described a variety of cementation brass making techniques and came closer to understanding the true nature of the process, noting that copper became heavier as it changed to brass and that it became more golden as additional calamine was added. 107. Zinc metal was also becoming more commonplace. By 1513 metallic zinc ingots from India and China were arriving in London, and pellets of zinc condensed in furnace flues at the Rammelsburg in Germany were exploited for cementation brass making from around 1550. 108. Eventually it was discovered that metallic zinc could be alloyed with copper to make brass, a process known as speltering. 109. And by 1657 the German chemist Johann Glauber had recognized that calamine was nothing else but unmeltable zinc, and that zinc was a half-ripe metal. 110. However, some earlier high zinc, low-ion brasses such as the 1530 Whiteman brass memorial plaque from England may have been made by alloying copper with zinc and include traces of cadmium similar to those found in some zinc ingots from China. 109. However, the cementation process was not abandoned, and as late as the early 19th century there are descriptions of solid-state cementation in a domed furnace at around 950 degrees Celsius and lasting up to 10 hours. 111. The European brass industry continued to flourish into the post-medieval period, buoyed by innovations such as the 16th century introduction of water-powered hammers for the production of wares such as pots. 112. By 1559 the German city of Gien alone was capable of producing 300,000 cwt of brass per year. 112. After several false starts during the 16th and 17th centuries, the brass industry was also established in England, taking advantage of abundant supplies of cheap copper smelted in the new coal-fired reverberatory furnace. 113. In 1723 Bristol brass maker Nehemiah Champion patented the use of granulated copper produced by pouring molten metal into cold water. 114. This increased the surface area of the copper, helping it treat, and zinc contents of up to 33% weight were reported using this new technique. 115. In 1738 Nehemiah's son William Champion patented a technique for the first industrial-scale distillation of metallic zinc known as distillation per decentcum or the English process. 116, 117. This local zinc was used in speltering and allowed greater control over the zinc content of brass and the production of high zinc copper alloys which would have been difficult or impossible to produce using cementation, for use in expensive objects such as scientific instruments, clocks, brass buttons and costume jewelry. 118. However, Champion continued to use the cheaper calamine cementation method to produce lower zinc brass. 118. And archaeological remains of beehive-shaped cementation furnaces have been identified at his works at Warmley. 119. By the mid to late 18th century, developments in cheaper zinc distillation such as John Jacques horizontal furnaces in Belgium and the reduction of tariffs on zinc. 120, as well as demand for corrosion-resistant high zinc alloys increased the popularity of speltering, and as a result cementation was largely abandoned by the mid-19th century. 121. See also brass bed, brass rubbing, list of copper alloys. Citations.
Good. Did finish this. So let's close. But I think we have to read this tomorrow, of course. The power is very low. So that was brass. We can take it out. My list. But that will take many weeks to read this. We cannot almost read about the computer. So let's, but I think I should read about stainless steel and bronze and stainless steel. But not now. I think close for today. And charge the camcorder for tomorrow. Just continue tomorrow. So that's 3-part brass. So let's know which could be brass used for a boiler. In my, but probably it's much cheaper just to use stainless steel. In a boiler design, you use it. With Lesco that use stainless steel, this toy brand. So I don't know.